What is up, everybody? Steve here, and it's been a minute. I've lost my voice, but we're back. I've been working on other things and the other channel, but it's Steve and Can't Cook, and I'm going nowhere. Today we're making pho, Hanoi style, northern style, where people say it all started, where it originated from, and that's the beautiful Kim enjoying a nice, elegant bowl. So we're gonna start off with our beef bones here. This is about 4.5 pounds. And to my surprise, there's pork in this broth recipe. So we're gonna go 1 to 2 pounds of some pork knuckles. This is cut up at the market I go to, and 1 to 2 pounds of beef brisket. All right, so 4.5 pounds of beef bones, 2 pounds of pork bones or pork knuckle here, pork feet, and 1 to 2 pounds of beef brisket. And this is going to be our foundation. Cold water from the start. Hit it with that salt. Bring her up to a boil. And we're going to prep our fresh aromatics. I have 1 large Fuji apple here. I have 1 large to 2 large pieces of ginger, and we have 5 shallots here. Fuji apple we're just gonna peel and slice up. Ginger we're just gonna peel and leave whole. And the shallots we're gonna cut off the edges and take off that outer layer. Boom, everything goes into our cast iron skillet, so it's easier to char here. Medium heat. This is about 5 minutes. You can see the scum rising to the top. Turn off the heat, let it cool down a bit before we give it a cold plunge shower. Rinse off the brisket, rinse off the beef bones, rinse off your pork feet, pork knuckle. Get all that scum off with the cold tap water. We're gonna let that dry out a bit and set aside. Into our main pot we go, the bigger pot. Just easier for me to work with here, and I'm going to use some filtered water. If you can, if not, tap water is fine. In goes our beef brisket. In goes our beef bones. Gelatinous beef knuckle. Look at the pork feet. That's the skin and some pork pieces. So get everything into your main pot, and we're going to add about 8 liters here of filtered high-quality water. And this is our main pho pot. Bring her up to a boil, and it won't be 100% perfectly clean from that first round. So make sure to skim off any excess scum during this process. It will rise to the top. It's much easier since it's clear at the beginning. Here is our fresh aromatics that we've had on medium heat for a few minutes. Turn her down to a low boil, and then we're gonna focus on charring our fresh aromatics. You can see the apple getting some color. And you guys know me, I like playing with fire, and I have a bunch of these excess butane cartridges that we use on our outdoor stove. Once they get towards the end, doesn't really have enough power left, so I save them and use them on the torch. So I torch it just to give it some color, just to speed up the process, but no big deal if you don't have it. And then we're gonna add our charred fresh aromatics into the broth here. The total heat time is gonna be 3 whole hours. It's a very quick broth a very light broth. So 1 hour in, we're gonna take out our beef brisket because it's cooked and we don't wanna overcook it. And we're just gonna rinse her off with cold water and let it soak in cold water for 30 minutes. Let it dry out and it's ready to slice. This stops the cooking process and easier to handle, to cut, etc. Here are our dry spices. I have some star anise, some coriander seeds. I'm adding some fennel, and those are some cardamom pods that I smashed up. This here is optional. It's called sasung in Vietnamese. It's dried earthworms, and those are some dried dehydrated shrimps, all to add natural umami to the broth without adding anything else at first. Get her in the spice ball, and the pot was kind of crowded. It was very hard for me to get the spice ball in, and my worst nightmare. It's really hot, so I was fidgeting around with it, and the spice ball exploded, which kind of defeats the purpose of a spice ball because it's supposed to keep everything contained and organized.
All the hard work.
But shit happens. It's okay. Just let it be. And we're going to let this ride for another 2 hours. And here I'm just going to season it with 2 tablespoons of fine sea salt. And this is our first attempt at seasoning our broth. Again, a very light and simple broth, so nothing crazy here. About half the time, more than half the time, than a southern style broth. And I think for back in the day, they didn't have as much resources to keep the pot rolling for 8 hours. So I think it makes sense because they were using live charcoal. So this recipe is only 3 hours. It's very light. And then here's our brisket that I thinly sliced up. Super easy. Set aside. Here we have our fresh pho noodles. If you have a local Asian market, usually on weekends, they keep these in stock, especially in the morning until they run out. It's a rare treat, but if you can get some, it's a treat for northern style pho because it's known for using fresh, flat rice noodles. You can get the dry version, but it doesn't have that bounce. It doesn't have that texture like the fresh version. So there, I'm just loosening it up, and I store it in a container with the lid. You don't want to store it in the fridge because it will harden. So after 3 hours, total heat time on heat, turn it off, let it cool down. And we're gonna throw away our fresh aromatics and our dry aromatics that is floating around in that pot also. So the ginger, the shallots, go in the trash can. Then we're gonna fish out our beef bones and our pork bones that I save, set aside because there's still meat on there. Still very delicious things that you can call on and eat. That's the pork. So now that our broth is clear, that is our final boss right there with just 2 tablespoons of fine sea salt so far. So let that chill out. Let's start on our green onions. Separate the whites, and we're gonna slice them the long way, like this, kind of like a diagonal. You want to turn it, and this just gives it a different texture, makes it a little bit more pretty instead of cutting the whole thing the same way. And for the greens, we're just gonna thinly slice it as so, and it kind of gives you just a different look to the bowl when you assemble it, which makes it much prettier. And one of the characteristics of northern style pho. Here I got some dry aged ribeye. This is towards the end, probably like 20 plus days. Slice her up, and we're gonna cut out the pellicle, which is the dark spots, the beef jerky. You can use round eye here, but we have ribeye at all times, so it's just easier and cheaper for us to go this route. Thinly slice. I kind of like to do it at an angle, especially if it's not frozen or half frozen. kind of just carve it like that. It doesn't have to be whole pieces as long as it's thin. Stored in a container and set aside. And that's our mise here. We got our brisket, our steak, our green onions. There's some beef bones if you want to add it to the bowl. Boom, boom, boom. There's that pot of fresh pho noodles that we keep. And that's our main pot right there. So bring her up to a boil. Give it a taste. It's super light. So I'm going to hit it with some more fish sauce for the final tasting. You can add more salt and fish sauce here to finalize your broth. You want to be on the more saltier side if possible. No sugar was added. The only sugar was from the Fuji apple. Next up, we're going to do our chili and garlic, pickled chilies and garlic that you'll usually find at the table, northern style. Thinly sliced serranos, thinly sliced garlic, and just hit it with some rice vinegar. Give it a quick pickle. And this is kind of the chilies, the fresh chilies and garlic that we add to our bowl. Here is how I prepare the fresh noodles. So they have this nasty layer of soybean oil that is used to preserve it and make sure the noodles don't stick. But it is disgusting when it's in your pho. So rinse it off thoroughly. And you're left with this beautiful, bouncy pho noodles. And we're just going to line her up with that brisket. We're going to hit it with that rare steak, that dry-aged ribeye. And here comes our green onions. Make it look pretty. Give it some good spacing. Make sure all the colors show through and hit it with that beautiful, clean, hot, northern style broth. So clear. So delicious. Boom. I like garlic. This is like my third bowl. So I'm going straight to the pickled. I'm going straight with the lemon. Man, just a light broth. You can even see it on the spoon. It's very, very clear. The bouncy, chewy noodles. Fresh. Definitely a treat. And that tender brisket, thinly sliced to perfection. Simple. I do miss my bean sprouts. I do miss a lot of the other things that come with Southern style, but this was, definitely still did the job. And here's Kim. She's adding a little bit more fish sauce because it's a little light for her. And she is just hitting it with some of that pickled garlic. And it smells like pho spirit in the household. And I got the approval. Served with just a little bit of culantro and lemon. And as always, everybody, thank you for watching. I miss you guys. Subscribe, like, love.